It looked like there is major news coming out the city of New York. Many New York insiders is saying that the Jets have definitely contacted the Cleveland Browns in regards to acquiring Shedeur Sanders, and they ain't the only team. Many other teams have called up about him, and the way it's looking, based on the reports that is floating around online, the Browns could be definitely shopping Shedeur Sanders around. Now, what does that mean for the media in Cleveland?
It looked like there is major news coming out the city of New York. Here's the complete, fully documented record. Don't skip a single second of this video. And if this story touches your heart, give it a like, subscribe to the channel, and let us know in the comments. Where are you watching from? Let's begin. Calls, that's the word. Not rumor, not speculation, not some throwaway line buried at the bottom of a hot take segment. Calls, plural, ongoing, happening right now as you're watching this. And the second I heard it, I knew this wasn't another off-season ghost story we'd all forget about by the weekend. Think about what that word actually means. When an insider with real access to that building goes on the air name attached, reputation on the line, and says there are talks and ongoing calls about the availability of Shedeur Sanders, he is not guessing. He didn't say maybe. He didn't say I'm hearing whispers. He said it in present tense, with a deadline bolted right onto it. Training camp opens July 28th, and he flat out told everybody he doesn't believe 4 quarterbacks are walking through that door together. Do the math on that. 4 arms, 1 decision, 1 date. Something's got to give. And here's the part that should make every Browns fan sit up straight. This didn't come from some random account farming engagement. It came from a Cleveland voice, their corner of the media. And instead of shutting it down, instead of protecting their second-year quarterback, the team's own affiliated outlet amplified it, pushed it, treated it like a story worth telling instead of a fire worth putting out. When the people closest to the building are the ones fanning the flames, that tells you everything about how secure this kid actually is. Then, it exploded. Within 24 hours one single day, you had national outlet after national outlet running their own breakdowns. Different writers, different angles, different lists of teams. But they all landed on the same picture. The calls are real. The interest is real, and the clock is ticking. Now let me twist the knife, because this is the part that gets me. Shedeur Sanders is the single most talked about quarterback in football relative to where he got drafted, the most discussed, the most debated, the most clicked, and somehow, the only franchise that actually drafted him still won't say the words, won't commit, won't plant a flag and say this is our guy. How does that happen? How do you have the most magnetic young name in the league sitting in your building, and your move is to leave the door cracked open for everybody else to call? That's not a depth chart decision. That's disrespect. And that disrespect is going to power this entire video. So here's where we're going. One name refused to disappear from every single breakdown. One team kept surfacing at the top no matter who was writing. The New York Jets. And I'm about to show you exactly why New York keeps coming up, why the timing of all this is way too suspicious to ignore, and why this front office might actually pull the trigger. Because the deeper you dig into Cleveland's side of this story, the worse it gets. A lot worse. Let me paint you a picture that makes absolutely no sense. On one side, you've got a quarterback whose name alone can move the entire NFL news cycle in an afternoon. One mention, one report, one radio segment, and suddenly 5 national outlets are scrambling to write about him. That's the kind of gravity we're talking about. That's not normal for a young quarterback. That's superstar gravity. And on the other side, he's buried in a 4-man quarterback room with no starter named, no commitment given, and a coaching staff that keeps acting like it's the hardest decision in the world. Read that back to yourself. The most talked about quarterback in football, relative to where he was drafted, is sitting in a room fighting for a job that should already be his to lose. Let's break down that room in plain terms, because it's a mess. You've got Deshaun Watson coming back into the building, soaking up the money and the reps, even though everybody outside that facility can see where that road leads. You've got Dillon Gabriel, a fellow rookie, still hanging around in the mix. You've got a late-round arm tossed on top of the pile, just for good measure. And then you've got Shedeur Sanders, the one name in that entire room the rest of the league is actually calling about. 4 quarterbacks, 0 answers, and a head coach who won't plant his flag on anybody heading into camp. Now flip over to what the actual football world is saying about this kid. Analysts going on air calling him a starter, flat out. No hedging, saying his ceiling is to the roof. Saying he's a superstar in this league who just needs the opportunity to show it. Fan bases lighting up at the mere thought of landing him. Big markets that would trade real assets just to get that built-in attention attached to their franchise. The buzz is deafening. So sit with the absurdity of it. Talent and noise on one side, a clipboard and a question mark on the other. Stars don't sit. Stars play. That's the rule this league runs on. You don't let a name like that rot behind a veteran on borrowed time. And here's the tell that nobody wants to say out loud. The outlet pushing this story hardest? It's Cleveland's own affiliated media. When the people closest to your building are the ones amplifying the "he might be available" narrative instead of slamming the door on it. That's not protection, that's a signal. Buildings protect the guys they believe in, they float the guys they don't. Stars don't sit, stars play. And yet here he is, the most discussed young arm in the sport, treated like a maybe instead of a mission. So that's the gap. That's the contradiction sitting right at the center of this whole thing. What he is and how he's being used don't even live in the same zip code. Which leaves one question hanging over all of it. Why won't they just commit? Here's the line that should make every fan furious. The insider didn't just say teams were calling. He said the Browns, for whatever reason, don't think he's the guy. Let that sit. The franchise that drafted him doesn't believe in him. And I want to be honest with you, I'm not going to pretend the doubters have nothing to point at. But I'm going to show you why every single one of their points falls apart the second you look at the situation around him. Let's walk it back. His rookie year didn't start with a fair shot. It started with him watching. For the first 10 weeks, he didn't take a single start. Joe Flacco got the nod. Dillon Gabriel, a fellow rookie, got the nod ahead of him too. He finally took over in week 12, and went 3-4 over his final 7 starts. The stat line was up and down, 120 of 212, around 1,400 yards, 7 touchdowns, and 10 interceptions. And the critics love that last number, 10 picks. They quote it like it's the whole story. So let me give the skeptics their due. Yeah, the turnovers were real. 10 interceptions is 10 interceptions. And no, a 3-4 stretch isn't a highlight reel. I'm not here to lie to you and tell you he was perfect, because he wasn't. But here's what they conveniently leave out. You cannot fairly judge a quarterback who was thrown into a broken building with nothing underneath him. No early reps to grow into the speed of the game. No runway. No offseason as the clear guy. He spent the first chunk of his rookie season holding a clipboard, then got tossed into the fire mid-year and asked to save a sinking season behind a shaky situation. Of course the numbers were bumpy. That's not a talent problem. That's a circumstance problem. Put any young quarterback in that exact spot and tell me they'd come out clean. We've seen this script before. We've watched young quarterbacks get buried, get doubted, get written off, and then look like superstars the moment a building actually decided to believe in them. The difference is never just talent. The difference is commitment. And that's the nerve that really stings. Even the people in his own corner have said it out loud, a team needs to commit to its quarterback. That's not a wild fan take. That's basic. You want greatness out of a young arm, you plant your flag, and you build around him. Cleveland never did that. Not once. They left him out there to sink or swim while keeping every other option warm. So sit in that anger for a second, because you've earned it. This kid was set up to be evaluated on a test that was rigged from day one. But here's where I want to flip the whole thing on you. If that's the building undecided, unconvinced, unwilling to commit, then maybe leaving isn't a demotion at all. Maybe it's the escape. Now let me show you the good part. Because everything we just talked about, the doubt, the logjam, the building that never picked a side, all of it, suddenly stops feeling like a trap and starts looking like a door. And on the other side of that door are the New York Jets. Here's why every outlet kept landing on them, and it's not just the bright lights, it's football logic. New York is set up to lean on Geno Smith in 2026, a 36-year-old quarterback who didn't even finish last season healthy. And behind him, nothing proven. No long-term answer. No plan locked in. That's a roster quietly screaming for someone worth betting on. You don't reach for the most talked about young arm in football to be a clipboard guy. You reach for him because the future seat is wide open. Now picture what a fresh start actually looks like for a 24-year-old. A clean building, a coaching staff with no baggage attached to him, a real runway instead of a 6-week holding pattern where he waits around his insurance while somebody else takes the first snaps. A chance to walk in and compete for the job, not beg for scraps. Compete, the right room changes everything. And the analysts have already said the quiet part out loud. This kid is a superstar in this league who just needs the opportunity to show it. His ceiling is to the roof. The talent was never the question. The situation was. So you take that talent, you hand it a new home where he's running the show, and you find out what happens when belief finally meets ability. Then think about the marriage itself. The biggest media market in the country handed a quarterback who already commands national attention every time his name hits the air. That's not a gamble for New York, that's a headline machine. That's highlight reels and sold-out buzz and a fan base that would fall in love on day one. The market and the player are built for each other. The right room changes everything, and stack up what he's bringing through that door. Youth, he's only in year 2. Hunger, he's been doubted since draft night and never stopped fighting. A chip on his shoulder the size of the entire state of Ohio after the way Cleveland handled him. And for the first time, a real shot at leadership, at reps, at ownership of an offense that's actually his. You give a competitor like that a clean slate and a reason to prove everybody wrong, and you are playing with fire in the best possible way. We've seen it before. We've watched quarterbacks walk out of bad situations and into the right one, and suddenly the league acts surprised like the talent appeared overnight. It didn't. It was always there. It just needed the right room. So here's the truth nobody saw coming. The door everybody thought was locked might be the single best thing that ever happened to him. And the next 12 months, they could rewrite this entire story. So let's pull it all together, because when you line these threads up next to each other, the picture is impossible to ignore. On the record calls present tense, plural, from an insider with his name attached. A hard deadline staring everybody down with camp opening July 28th. National outlets, 5 of them, independently circling the same handful of teams within a single day. And underneath all of it, a franchise that never once committed to the most talked about young quarterback in the sport. That's not a random off-season flare-up. That's a story that was always heading toward a breaking point. And now I'm going to plant my flag. I don't think this fizzles out. I think this is the moment it tips. When a building won't believe in you. When other teams are calling. When the clock is ticking down to camp something gives. And my call is simple. I think Shedeur Sanders ends up somewhere he's actually wanted, with a real shot to compete, and I think the smarter franchise moves before camp even opens to grab him. Because the team that hesitates is the team that watches somebody else cash in. Now let me talk straight to the people watching. To the doubters, the 10 interceptions crowd, the he's just a backup crowd. The ones who buried him before he ever got a fair runway you are about to look foolish. You judged a kid on a test that was rigged from day one, and the second he lands in the right room, that whole argument falls apart. And to the believers, the ones who saw the superstar ceiling, the ones who never stopped riding for this kid, your faith is about to get paid back with interest. So do me a favor, screenshot this, mark the date. When this breaks the way I'm telling you it's going to break, you remember exactly where you heard it called first. Because let's say it one more time, loud, for the people in the back. Stars don't sit. Stars play. And you do not let the single most talked about young arm in football rot on a bench because you were too scared to make a decision. But here's the thing, I don't want this to end clean and quiet. I want you fired up. Because the truth is, nobody knows the final move yet, and that's exactly what makes this so good. The calls are real. The clock is real. The pressure is real. And the next chapter writes itself the moment somebody blinks. So I'm throwing it to you. Drop it in the comments and don't hold back. Should the team cash in right now, take the value, and let this kid go chase a starting job somewhere he's actually wanted? Or do they hold on, dig in, and risk wasting the most talked about young arm in the entire league? Tell me where you stand. Argue it out down below. And stick around, because the second this thing moves, I'm breaking down every piece of it. This story is far from over.